Thanks, Dan. Thank you, Jennifer, the city staff. And to everyone watching us online, everyone joining the meeting. Tonight is the June 10th meeting of the City of Edina Planning Commission. As we've been doing for the last several weeks, we are meeting electronically and comply with the stay-at-home and other stay-at-home orders and just general safety issues. I assume as we move into these more transitional eras, we'll have more of a hybrid type situation. Everybody tonight, for tonight's meeting, all members of the Planning Commission, all staff, all meeting participants are participating remotely via call-in technology. And tonight's meeting includes public hearings for the commission to consider a proposed site plan and parking stall variance for M Health Fairview Southdale Hospital at 6401 France Avenue and a subdivision with variances at 5928 Abbott Avenue. Before we begin, bear with me in my lengthy introductory because of the current procedures. There's a few logistics that I'd like to cover. First of all is input, and the city is constantly making strides, actually, has made a lot of strides to make sure that all people that want to participate can participate, particularly in these days when we're not having in-person meetings. We have been receiving good feedback through a variety of methods, including voicemail, the city's online feedback and comment form, and the city's engagement website, which is bettertogetheredina.org. And all comments that were submitted have been made available to members of the Planning Commission. And, speaking for myself, I've read every comment, and I believe staff's read every comment. I believe that all members of the Planning Commission have read the comments that we received also. And if you submitted a comment, you don't need to submit the comment any other way. So thank you for your submissions. All feedback is considered equally, regardless of the matter in which it was submitted. However, there is an opportunity for individuals for tonight's public hearings if individuals want to provide feedback on those specific matters. If you do want to provide testimony for one of the two public matters tonight, call 1-800-374-0221 with conference ID 387-4344. You will be given 3 minutes to speak, and staff or I will let you know about at the 2:30 mark and definitely at the 3-minute mark. Note, however, that the city right now, because of the remote meeting procedures, is not doing community comment, which enables people to just come and speak about any general matter that's not on the agenda. If you'd like to participate, if you'd like to make a comment regarding general matters affecting the city or matters that aren't on tonight's agenda, a good way to do that is to use the city's online correspondence form, which can be found on the Edina Planning Commission website or the Edina City Council website. Again, if you've already provided feedback, you don't need to provide additional feedback. We have it. If you do call in, we ask that you try to provide new feedback, or not the same feedback they provided, or not the same feedback that someone else already provided. If we hear the same thing several times, it won't change our opinion. So just to make sure the meeting is expeditious for everyone, we ask that if you can, provide unique feedback. Thank you. Thanks for your patience as we're doing this. I think all our meetings have gone very well from all standpoints. And, we generally don't have technology glitches, but in the event we do, we apologize in advance and just bear with us while we try to work through it. With that said, I think that long intro said, I think that takes us to our meeting. And the first item, I believe, would be the call to order by staff member Liz Olson.
Thank you, Chair Nemerov. Could I kindly just remind everyone that if you're not already muted, please do so there's no background noise. Commissioner Agnew. Commissioner Strauss.
Here.
Commissioner Thorson,
Present.
Commissioner Berube,
Here.
Commissioner Miranda,
Here.
Chair Nemerov.
Thank you. And then we have, the meeting agenda has been shared publicly since Friday. Does anyone on the Planning Commission have any comments to that or a motion for approval?
I move approval of the agenda as submitted.
That's Commissioner Thorson. Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay. Couple of seconds, so that's almost everyone here. Liz, could you do another roll for the approval of the meeting agenda?
Commissioner Agnew,
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss,
Aye.
Commissioner Thorson,
Aye.
Commissioner Berube,
Aye.
Commissioner Miranda,
Aye.
Chair Nemerov.
Aye. Thank you, Liz. The next matter would be approval of the meeting minutes of our May 27th meeting. Does anyone have any comments to those, or does anyone wish to make a motion regarding those minutes? Motion to approve.
I move approval of the minutes as submitted.
Second. Liz, could you do a roll call vote for that? And for people online, we have, with the online method, we have to do roll call votes for everything. We have some good record of how people voted.
Thank you. Commissioner Agnew,
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss,
Aye.
Commissioner Thorson,
Aye.
Commissioner Berube,
Aye.
Commissioner Miranda,
Aye.
Chair Nemerov.
Aye. Oh, thank you. Well, thank you for bearing with us. Now we've come to already to the public hearing portion of our meeting. And as I mentioned, we have two matters for public hearing. The first one, staff will start us off on, is the preliminary plat with multiple variances at 5928 Abbott Avenue. So, Carrie, are you presenting on this one?
Carrie, your microphone's on mute.
There. Okay, I found it. Are you, is everybody seeing my screen?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
In presentation mode though, Carrie.
Yeah, I'm having troubles on my end. I can only see two people and my presentation. Well, if you can see my screen.
Right now, it's on the parking stall variance for M Health, and it's a PowerPoint that you're showing.
Oh boy. I seem to be getting worse at this as we go. I apologize for this.
Carrie, you were just sharing your screen a moment ago and it looked good to go. It was in presentation mode.
The trouble is, I'm only seeing the M Health, and I don't see the other one. Unbelievable.
Would it be appropriate to make a motion that we adjust our agenda and we review M Health first? If so, I'd be glad to make that motion.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So,
Yeah, Carrie, are you gonna? Does Liz have your presentation available?
It is in the Planning Commission iDrive.
Okay, I'll take a look for it right now.
Okay.
We could go to the M Health, and then I can close that and hopefully then open.
Are all the M Health representatives available right now?
Yeah, Pete Solomon from Perkins and Will is present, and the other member is Faye. I'm not sure if she is here.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
And Pete,
Okay.
Pete, I had you and Samuel DeCosimo speaking.
Yeah, Faye Drake is going to be actually representing Fairview.
Okay, she's
And
on.
I think I may have just heard her voice.
I think, okay.
Yes, I'm available. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Carrie, why don't we do that? I apologize to the homeowners on 5928 Abbott, but this might be, it's one of those technical things. Carrie, we see your screen. You ready to roll?
Yep, let's roll. And our traffic and parking consultant, Chuck Rickert, is with us also. So this property, this is the Southdale Fairview Hospital. Applicant is M Health. What they would like to do at the property on Crosstown and France. Property is zoned Regional Medical District. It's the only regional medical district that we have in town. So unique property. What they're proposing to do is build a 38,000 square foot addition. Basically, it would be a third and fourth level above the emergency room. This is a rendering of the addition itself. It would include 52 new rooms. They would be single beds within each room. This is not an expansion of hospital beds within the hospital. It's simply to provide more privacy for the patients in the hospital. So going away from the double occupancy rooms to more single occupancy. There's no additional staff as a result of this expansion as well. So here's a look at the site plan. This is where the addition would be located. It meets all of our setback requirements, so no variances requested. There's no changes to the existing site plan, no landscaping changes. It's all just, again, built above an existing structure. So the request does require a parking stall variance from 2,728 spaces required to the 2,051 spaces that are existing. So the primary issue for consideration here is the variance request reasonable. As I mentioned, we did have a parking and traffic study done by WSB. They've done all of the previous studies on this site. Chuck Rickert is with us this evening. The study does conclude that the existing roadway system can support the project. Again, this addition doesn't really require additional parking stalls on the site with the same number of beds in the hospital and same staff. So we believe that the variance request is reasonable given those study conclusions. And also the west ramp across the street on the west side of France, that parking ramp could be expanded a couple of levels added to it. So should parking ever be a problem for the hospital, they do have options to add additional parking. That parking study did conclude that based on the existing operations and proposed, they really need about a little over 1,700 parking stalls. And again, there's over 2,000 stalls located on the site today. So with that, staff recommends approval of the variances requested and the site plan. And with that, I will stop there and answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Planner Teague, Jerry Strauss?
Yeah, thank you, Carrie. So if I heard that. I mean, so there's no additional staff, no additional rooms. It's really kind of redesigning, greater efficiencies. Is this kind of a hole in our maybe parking evaluation? I mean, it's sort of there is no additional parking required. So I mean, it's just sort of like, but something kicked in. The fact that there should be these many parking stalls seems to be some sort of.
Yeah, it's based on number of doctors in the hotel or in the hospital, the square footage. So based on all of that, that's where that big number comes from.
And then my other question, we see the whole parking model, particularly for retail, being very different, than 15, 20 years ago. And is that kind of a similar theme that we might see even with hospital parking requirements, that what may have been projected needs for parking is no longer the case?
Yeah, it's possible as we take a look at our parking ordinance in the near future. This is one of those. Again, our parking standards are a bit dated. The way we've been doing most projects, we have the parking study done where we really get the most up-to-date information in terms of the number of parking stalls that are needed for these uses.
Yeah. And so it's clear, I mean, staff's position is that this facility is adequately parked with the existing number of stalls.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else have questions for Jerry or for Carrie? Excuse me.
Yeah, I have a question, and this actually there's just one submittal on the Better Together Edina site. So you've probably seen it, but they're talking about several issues regarding pedestrian safety, noise, that sort of thing. So when you're, I know this addition isn't necessarily affecting the parking, but there are questions about the parking and then also the construction. And I think in general, they're good questions that, might be good to all of us get educated on it. Like in this type of situation, are there controls over the hours of when things can be constructed, the lighting, how it affects neighbors, that sort of thing? And these are broader questions, but I do think these comments on Better Together Edina are relevant, at least some of them, particular to this situation.
Yes, certainly. So they have to abide by our hours of construction within our city code. They've indicated generally they think construction would be in the 7:30 to 3:30 time range. Again, they have to conform to our ordinances, and we respond to that on a complaint basis. If it's after hours, the police take those complaints. Typically, planning staff follows up afterward. They might do a site visit in regard to the construction that's going on. We do have lighting standards. There's a lot of freeway lighting. We can take some measurements across the freeway. My guess is there's probably more light from the freeway lights that are shining across. But we also have standards about exposed light bulbs. You have to have a shield, they have to be diffused. We can take a look at some of those types of things on a complaint basis. So we could follow up on some of those. There also was some questions on the helicopter pad. There's no changes there. That's continue to operate as is.
Good. And then also, if someone had questions about, pedestrian crossing and that sort of thing, that really isn't, a part of this construction, they could go on to Better Together Edina and post a question specific to that and have it addressed. Is that right?
They could, yeah. Okay. We could have our transportation staff respond to questions about, future upgrades, those kind of things.
Okay. I just want to make sure that the questions that we can answer, we do, and the questions that we can't, they know we're not just, ignoring them, but there are other sources that they should go to.
Yeah, and also Mr. Rickard, our traffic consultant who's on the line, he was forwarded the question that was posted on Better Together, and he's prepared to respond to that one as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks. Does anyone else have any questions for staff? Would the applicant like this? Oh, Kate, do you have a question?
Yes, real quick. So there, I think I saw two numbers, Carrie, in the staff memo. I saw that the total size of the addition was going to be the 38,000 square feet, 38,206. But then I also saw in some of the materials reference to 44,000 square feet. Was there a change, or do you know which number is accurate?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Actually, both numbers are accurate. The total square footage is 44,000, but the way we calculate it for floor area ratio requirements, actual usable space, in our definition of gross square feet, we exclude restrooms, elevator shafts, mechanical equipment. So they subtracted that number out from the 44,000, and that's where the 38,000 comes from.
Okay, and then it's the 38,000 number that is what's divided by 200 to get the total number of parking units that would be required for that size. Okay, thank you for the clarification. That's all.
Good questions. Are there any planning commissioners have any further questions for Planner Teague? Okay. The applicant, would you like to speak now on behalf of M Health?
Yes, if you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Faye Dyke, and I'm the Chief Nursing Officer and Vice President for Patient Care at M Health Fairview, Southdale Hospital. And we're just we appreciate your time this evening. We're very pleased to be able to bring this forward for approval. As has been identified, essentially we're working to move Southdale Hospital to all private rooms. And if you have spoken to any people in the community, this is probably the most frequent complaint or concern that we hear from patients. They very, very much want private rooms. And this is a wonderful opportunity for us to bring that to our patients and to their families. It will benefit them very much in their care, and it will benefit, it'll be better for our staff and our doctors as well. The other thing I would just comment is in the design, we are trying to create the greatest level of flexibility that we can. As we have all been living through this pandemic, it has been challenging to have the right kind of bed and level of care that we need for patients, be it intensive care versus an intermediate care or a medical type bed that's more routine. And so we're designing these rooms with the capability and flexibility to be used for intensive care, but also to be used for medical and surgical patients. So we think this will help us be well prepared into the future for the things that we obviously can't know may come, given our recent experiences with COVID-19. So with that, I would just say thank you again for your time. And Pete is the expert on more of the building details and can offer that to you. Thank you.
I guess, oh, go ahead.
No, you please.
Sure. Yeah, I was just going to add a couple things. Yeah, Faye pretty much said it all. But beyond that, I would just like to say we had a series of good meetings with the city of Edina, the 30%, 60, and 90% meetings. So we had a good opportunity with a lot of the personnel to go through all the issues and answer any questions that people had. And then we also met with the Planning Commission at one point. So I feel like we had some pretty good dialogue all the way along leading up to this point. And I'd be willing to answer any questions that you would have.
Any planning commissioners have questions for the applicant? Okay. Oh, Kate.
I know I'm always so late to the game. Thank you. The one question that I have is, do you have an estimate on how long the construction is going to take? And can you estimate what the impact is going to be for the patients that are in the hospital today or during the construction?
Pete can probably help better with the time frame. We hope to have this construction completed, I would say, August of 2021 is our goal. In terms of the impact to patients, actually this is better than many of the projects I've been involved with by adding on top of, we're not really trying to work in an area where patients already exist. We do have some build out on one floor on both ends of that. We'll be finishing off some shelled space. And so we'll be very careful about planning, whether if our census or our number of patients accommodates it, we'll keep them away from that area. And otherwise, we always have the ability to stop construction if the noise becomes too disruptive for patient care or for patient concerns. We always are sure to do that with our whoever is building. You want to be able to stop something if there's significant noise and it's disturbing patients. So that we'll work very closely with construction and our clinical team to try to plan this out in a way to be least disruptive. The patients it's closest to are some observation patients, and they stay usually 20 to 28 hours in the hospital and then go home. So these are not our sickest patients either.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do any other commissioners have questions for the applicant at this time?
A quick question.
Okay. Lou?
Yeah, so I can see that you wouldn't have any additional, nursing or hospital staff if you're having the same number of patients. But by having so much more space, or you're having more, reception areas or more cleaning crew or something that would bump up the usage a little bit.
I would say that we will have incremental, potentially incremental increase in environmental services staff. That's possible. What we will be doing is, again, pretty much having close to the same number of patients, just spread across a larger number of square feet, if you will. So it's possible that we will see some, what I would call incremental. So that might be, very small numbers of people.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other commissioners have questions for the applicant at this time? Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. And then, so then this would be the part of the meeting when we could have a public hearing. And so anyone any member of the public who wishes to call in and speak about this matter could call in now. You get up to 3 minutes. Again, if you want to do that, dial 1-800-374-0221, conference ID 3874344. Press #1 and you'll connect with the operator. And we'll take a moment to let the opportunity happen.
Chair Nemerov, this is Director Jennifer Bennerat. We do have one person on the call, but that person has not indicated a desire to speak at this point. I would remind anyone calling in to press *1 to provide testimony in this matter or any other public hearing. If this person doesn't indicate a desire to speak, I would still recommend that you stay on the line or, holding pattern for a minute or so in case other people join us due to the delay in the broadcast.
Okay. *1. Yeah, thank you. Wait. We could do room raider.
Have a caller ready to speak.
Okay.
Operator, will you please unmute the line of Lori Grotz? Lori, please begin by stating your full name and address.
Ms. Brooks?
The operator to unmute her line. Please stand by.
Hello.
Please go ahead.
Yes, my name is Lori Groats. I live at 5513 Park Place. I don't think I'll take 3 minutes, but if I go over 10 seconds or so, my husband is here. Maybe you'll give me his 10 seconds. We've lived in the city for over 41 years, so we've seen Fairview come to the city for variances or change of zoning many times over the years. $41 million. Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, you faded out after you talked about seeing Fairview come for variances, and then you faded out.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'll speak a little closer to the phone. So the last time that Fairview came was a few years ago for a $41 million addition for emergency room and observation status rooms. The observation status rooms are not for the advantage of seniors in Edina because Medicare does not pay for observation status if you stay overnight. That has to come out of your own pocket. Observation status is covered under Part B of Medicare, not Part A. But it's very profitable for the hospital. Now they would like to convert semi-private rooms to private rooms, which again is a disadvantage for seniors because Medicare does not reimburse for a private room. They only reimburse for a semi-private room. The Hospital Association says hospitals are losing lots of money, and that's why they're laying off nurses, yet Fairview seems to have the monies to build. I'd like to know how many semi-private rooms does Fairview currently have, and what is the occupancy rate? And also, if the Planning Commission wants to endorse the variance for the parking, I would suggest that you suggest to the council to make a deal with Fairview so that Fairview pays for Edina fireworks going forward as long as Fairview has a hospital in Edina. And also on the evening of July 4th, on their west parking ramp, open that up and let residents park in there for free for fireworks. Fairview Southdale had been paying for fireworks for many years. Last year, at the last minute, they decided they weren't going to pay for fireworks in Edina. And Edina had to come up with another plan to pay for the fireworks. Edina's been a good neighbor. And it would be far less expensive for Fairview to pay for fireworks going forward than it would be for them to put additions onto their parking ramps. So
Lori, you
maybe
have a couple of seconds.
Oh, well, I guess I'm done. Maybe if they can answer questions for me, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jennifer, is there anyone else, other member of the public wishes to speak? Jennifer?
There are no other callers at this time.
Should we wait another moment, or you think we're good?
I think it's safe to move on.
Okay, thank you. All right. That said, let's close community comment on this matter then. Is there a motion?
Motion to close the public hearing.
I second.
Liz, could you do a roll, please?
Commissioner Agnew.
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss.
Aye.
Commissioner Thorson.
Aye.
Commissioner Berube.
Aye.
Commissioner Miranda.
Aye.
Chair Nemerov.
Aye. So regarding the comments we received from the public, I think that Well, we have the traffic person on for the one and Better Together. Carrie, who's on from traffic?
Chuck Rickert is here from WSB.
Okay, Mr. Rickert, do you have anything to share regarding the comments from Better Together?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. The only thing I'll let you know, when we did our traffic and parking study, we actually, although they're not increasing anything, we did look at the square footage and how much that would generate in new traffic if it was all new space. And it ended up in our report, I think it was a very modest increase in traffic for that 44,000, what we assumed to be 44,000 square feet of 39 additional trips in the morning and 43 in the evening. So that we did our analysis assuming that was in there. So we did increase traffic slightly. And again, the intersection still operated fine. As far as the parking goes, we looked at their peak rates, or what they provided us, as far as their peak parking demand, and that's what the variance is based on. However, we did look at ITE rates, and as indicated previously, the ITE rates that we looked at back in 2013 when they did their emergency room addition, actually the rates for the hospital and medical office have gone down over those years. So ITE is actually recommending even fewer spaces now than there were back in 2013. So with that, I'm very comfortable with how much parking they do have on site right now, and the operations of the intersections in the area.
Thank you. Does any commissioners have questions for Mr. Rickert?
I do.
Okay.
This is
Okay.
Commissioner Agnew.
Okay.
I was reading through the report, and maybe you can help clarify this for me. I was under the impression that because there wasn't expected to be any more beds or any more staff needed for this additional square feet, that therefore there wasn't the perceived impact to an increase in the number of parking stalls needed or a perceived impact to the traffic. But am I misunderstanding that? Is there an estimated increase in traffic, or do we think that it's going to be negligible?
That's what I indicated previously, that it's going to be negligible for the uses, even if the 44,000 square feet would generate new traffic. It would be 39 trips in the morning and 43 in the PM peak. So it's a very minor increase in traffic, even if it would. So we looked at that as a worst case condition. Again, the not increasing the number of beds, the number of trips, or staff, the number of trips is not gonna increase. If it does, from the environmental staff, as they indicated, it's going to be very, very minor. So.
Anything further?
And I do see that in that area, especially during those peak times, that traffic does get backed up. I'm sure all of that was taken into account, and I know it's a very extensive 16-page report that was pulled together. I don't know, I guess as a community member, I'm already a little concerned about the traffic in that area. And it's hard for me to really estimate, an additional 39 vehicles per hour in the morning when I do see kind of that worst backup. I guess I'm sorry. I don't think that there was a question embedded in there. I think my main concern is just what the impact would be to that traffic.
Okay. Well, we'll have an opportunity for discussion soon also. So then the other feedback we received, I think I'm going to direct it toward the applicant, if you heard that, because it was very interesting, kind of a bigger picture type questions. And I personally usually I'm almost always really into the bigger picture. On the planning commission, I sometimes feel like as a member of the planning commission, I sometimes feel like my scope is a little more narrow than the bigger picture, having to do with land use matters. And we've had, being this my 5th year on the planning commission, I've been, had these conversations with staff and training people and training consultants to the city and generally, and from the city's attorney training sessions. So we generally stick to land use matters. But that said, it was very interesting questions, and I like to, see if the applicant, you had a chance to listen, if you have any thoughts about the comments that were raised.
Yes, this is Faye Dyke again. So first of all, if I heard them correctly, what I would just say is, obviously, we do not control how Medicare determines what they cover or how they cover it. And obviously, we work within the environment and the constraints of Medicare. What I would say is that I do not believe we charge more for a private room than a semi-private room. I'll validate that. I can't do that on this call, but I will validate that. But I do not think we're charging people more for a private room. As you look at, the challenges that hospitals are facing and funding, all of those kinds of things, the reality is this is an investment by mHealth Fairview in our efforts to really transform healthcare. And I'm excited and proud that our system has recognized that Southdale Hospital and Edina is an environment and an area that we want to continue to invest in and support and assure that we have very strong health care for this community. So I think at the present time, we have approximately 63, 65 double beds. And the reality and the challenges of our world is we can't use all of those beds every day because some patients require a situation where because of their condition, because of their having issues with their own behaviors, for example, they can't have a roommate because of needing for isolation for infection control reasons. We can't use all of the beds that we have on every given day now. And so that limits the services that we can provide. So this is, I believe, a very positive investment in the facility to make sure that we have the private rooms so that we can admit patients and not be limited in terms of being able to allow them to come in. I appreciate the feedback about the fireworks and the opening of the ramp. I know that has been for a long time something that the community enjoyed. And as we have looked at what we can and can't do, that was something that was determined as an area not to continue. So appreciate that was something that a lot of people have enjoyed over the years. So there are some things we can't continue to do as we try to be responsible with our investments and dollars as well. So I'll pause there. I'm not sure that I captured everything that was raised, but happy to try to respond to any other questions or comments.
Thank you. I think you gave I think you did a good faith answer. So thank you very much. Now, with that said, let's see, correct me, my short-term memory is going here. Did we close community comments already? Yes. Okay. So that means it's time now for Planning Commission. If any further questions of anyone or any discussion, this was an opportunity. If you have feelings about any of the issues or the matter itself, this would be a good time. So I'll open it up for discussion among planning commissioners. Kate, you had something before. Did you feel like you covered it?
I don't have a specific question in it. My concern is just of any potential increase to traffic, but I'm curious what the other commissioners have to say about that or anything else.
Me too. Anyone else? Anyone else have any comments? Sheila?
I think this is an interesting situation because, as I understand it, it's been essentially what you'd call underparked the whole time, and they're finding they don't even use what they have. And so the reason we're seeing this is not really anything to do with the proposed construction, because that is completely different from parking. We're only talking about the parking because when you make a change, you have to address wherever you might need a variance, right? So you would think this is just something that is a formality, really, because they don't need more parking spaces. That's already been shown. We're not really increasing the number of occupants of the building. And so the only reason we're seeing it is because it's technically underparked, but we know from experience you don't need those spaces anyway. Because the construction has nothing to do with the proposed variance, and the variance has also already been proven to be adequate. In my mind, there's not really a question, it's a formality. But I do think that the caller brought up a really interesting point in that this is the one hospital in Edina. And I think we consider it a community hospital. I'm not sure exactly what that definition means, but if by going to all single rooms, anybody in Edina on Medicare would be prohibited from having their costs covered if they're in for observation, it feels like it's out of our scope of responsibility to even discuss that. I certainly know it's beyond my experience or expertise, but it does seem like that's something that should be addressed. And perhaps not here, but on a broader picture, if we're serving clients in Edina, we need to make sure that we're serving them in such a fashion that their costs can be covered efficiently. And if Medicare is not going to cover this, it just seems like there's a bigger discussion that needs to be had, but in my mind, not here. So for what we're asked to do, which is the formality of the variance for parking, to me, it's pretty black and white. They don't need the parking. And so I'm not opposed to going forward with the variance. But I do want to say, I think a broader discussion needs to be had. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Any other commissioners have any comments? I guess I just have two. One is I think Sheila's counsel and broader discussion are quite good. I don't know if we're the group to have it. I know over the past several days I've had conversations with friends and family that are doctors, and we actually spend a lot of time talking about how the coronavirus might change telemedicine and care for people in remote areas, and because they don't have any hospitals at all. And I just don't. It makes me think that I don't even know what the a municipality's input on the type of hospital that's in its community, how it operates. I mean, so it's a very interesting question, and it's probably one that will get talked about in the future. But for this particular matter, I don't know. The other thing about this is regarding Southdale, and kind of touches a little bit on Kate's comment, is when I think about the Fairview complex, I think it's a very unique land setting because it's kind of locked in. One of the things that always ticks in my head whenever I hear a parking variance is what will happen if they hit overflow. And Fairview, I think they're kind of stuck. It's not like people are going to start parking on neighbors' lots, so they would have to figure out my guess is they'd have to figure out a shuttle service of some sort. Methodist Hospital's been running a shuttle service for years, and I suspect other hospitals are too. Because when you go to Methodist, there's no other place to park if their parking lot is full. So that's probably something that Fairview have to figure out. But I like that because then it means if they do run out of parking, it doesn't impact a neighbor necessarily. So I'm a little more comfortable with it. And then finally, touching more directly on what Kate said, I do think that intersection at 65th sometimes gets interesting, particularly in the afternoon when you're coming out of the Southdale Medical Building and want to go there. There's a lot of traffic. When you get to that intersection on 65th, there's a lot of traffic heading east and west. It can make it kind of a challenge. Personally, I haven't noticed that as much with the Fairview Southdale Hospital as I have with the Southdale Medical Building. That seems to have there might be something that could be done there regarding that parking lot and getting onto 65th. But otherwise, I mean, I kind of conclude similarly to Sheila that this is almost a formality based on the way it is, and then the reports we receive from staff. So that concludes my comments. Does anyone else have any further comments?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, Lou.
Commissioner. Yeah. So, I pretty much agree with what you and Commissioner Berube have said. There's no increase in capacity. It's simply an increase in space. And if there's no increase in capacity, then there's no real increase in demand for parking. And so, and if anything, with the E-line bus going by there the next few years, I think if anything, that would probably drive parking demands down a little bit. I just don't see this really being an issue. And to me, it's very black and white.
Thank you. Anyone else, any other commissioners have any further comments? Does anyone wish to make a motion?
I move approval of the variance and site plan, subject to the findings and outcomes outlined in the staff memo.
Thank you, Commissioner Thorson. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Strauss. Liz, could you do a roll vote, please?
Thank you. Commissioner Neal?
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss?
Aye.
Commissioner Thorson?
Aye.
Commissioner Berube?
Aye.
Commissioner Miranda?
Aye.
Chair Nemerov?
Aye. So it sounds like we all approved it. Carrie, does this have to go to council or is this final?
This will go to the city council next Tuesday.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. And that takes us from the second item on our public hearings to our first matter on our public hearings. And that's the preliminary plat with multiple variances of 5928 Abbott Avenue. I'd like to thank the applicant for that one, for waiting while we discuss the hospital. Carrie, are we ready to roll?
I'm going to try it, and if it doesn't work, Liz has it. So let's give it a shot.
Thank you very much. I'm signing off. This is Faye Dyke.
You're welcome, Faye.
Okay, so I don't know if there's something in my PowerPoint, but I just clicked on it, and now my screen went blank. Can you see it?
Yes.
See it.
We can see it, but it's not yet in presentation mode.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's in good enough mode if this is the best you can. That's not as good.
Well, I can't see anything. So
Carrie,
I've got nothing on my screen. And I don't even know how to get out of that.
Liz, are you able to present?
Yes, Carrie, do you want me to try?
Yeah. Sorry about that. I don't get it.
Okay, bear with me just one moment. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. Great. Carrie, you just tell me when you want me to change the slides.
All right, you can change to the next one. So this property is located east of France. It's as you move toward the border of Minneapolis. That's the green shaded area. Next slide. And you can go one more. So this is a look at the site. It was originally platted as 2 lots. Note that all of the homes on Abbott are 50-foot wide lots that face each other, with the exception of this lot. It was the original owners must have combined the two lots and built one single-story Rambler home. Note that just to the west, the homes across the alley, they took 3 lots there and turned them into 2. So across the alley, you have a couple of somewhat larger lots. Next slide. There's a little closer view. You can see the little 50 notations on the slide. That indicates the lot width of the original lots in the underlying plat. Next slide. This is a look at the existing home on the site. There is an alley to the south and west side of the property. Again, it's a 100-foot wide lot. Next slide. This request was delayed from or continued from your last Planning Commission meeting in order for the applicant to work out some drainage concerns that our engineering staff had. This is the result of those concerns. They've revised the plans and made the drainage ponds there, highlighted in blue, a little bit larger to hold more water in a larger rain event to try to minimize impacts to adjacent properties. So engineering has reviewed this new plan, and they do find it acceptable. Of course, should this subdivision be approved, at the time of building permit with each of these lots, an even more in-depth review would take place. You can note here that the alley on the south and west side, that makes these lots a little bit smaller. Next slide. The applicant ran the median calculations, and the median for this area, that's all lots within 500 feet, is just over 6,700 square feet. Median depth, just under 130, and lot width at 50 feet. Next slide. So the request requires the subdivision to reestablish the old plat. Lot width variances from 75 feet to these lots fall in actually just a hair under 50 feet. Lot area variances from the 9,000 standard to just over 6,300. Again, these are a little smaller than the medians. I believe that's due to the alleys there that take up some of that lot area when these lots were originally platted. And then the same goes for the lot depth, a variance requested there. Next slide. So this is a slide you're all familiar with. We show similar subdivisions that have occurred over the past 15 years or so, where we're reestablishing original plats. The stars by the properties indicates subdivisions that were approved, and those that don't have stars were denied. I show this just because with each individual decision, the Planning Commission and Council really looks at them on an individual basis. In instances where they've been approved, oftentimes it's the last lot on the block, kind of similar to what we have before us this evening. In instances where they have denied subdivisions, similar to this, it's when there's been a real variety of larger lots within the area. Next slide. So in this case, staff does support the requested variance and the subdivision with the variances. Again, the proposal reestablishes the original plat. The variances, we believe, to split the lot are reasonable given the context of this block. Again, for the homes that face Abbott, all lots on this block are 50 feet wide with the exception of this site. Practical difficulties that make the lots a little smaller include the location of the alley on the south and west lot lines and the fact that the property owner originally combined the two lots. So with that, in conclusion, staff is recommending approval subject to the findings and conditions that are outlined in your staff report. And with that, I will stop there and answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for staff?
Carrie. Yes, Carrie. So we're just being asked for subdivision approval, the proposed pad for any possible house. We're not talking about side, front, backyard setbacks, height, any of those sort of things. We're just looking at approval of the plat itself. I mean, the overall parcel, right? But
That
there's
is
no,
correct. They would be required, each home would be required to meet the setback standards for each lot.
Okay. And just to confirm, I mean, the engineering memo was confident that the drainage and rain garden proposal would be adequate for any future, capture of surface water and stuff. So, I mean, that was engineering's finding, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Carrie, this is Commissioner Berube. I have a question for you. It's curious to me that on the pictures and on the diagram, we see an alley, and yet nearly all of the driveways go out to the street. So I'm just wondering presumably that alley is city land, which also, mitigates the concern of a little bit smaller lot because you've got probably a good 10 feet of alley, right? But are those paved? And what's the purpose since most of the cars exit on the street?
I believe they're paved. I'm not 100% sure. When I went by, I didn't look at that closely, but any property owner would have the option to access off the alley or the street. Like you say, there are some front-facing garages on the street.
Okay. Part of my question too, I'm thinking if drainage is a concern and those are paved and people aren't using them to access their driveway, I'm just wondering why we have those. Because you could have a pervious surface, right? But thank you.
Carrie, I have a question. This is Commissioner Agnew. In the requirements, they state that the required lot width is 75 feet. How was that calculated? Specifically because if every other lot on that street is 50 feet, I was under the impression that we could take the average of the other houses to get the requirement.
Yeah, so that's part of the reason we run those median. So the way the ordinance reads is that minimum lot size in Edina is a 75-foot wide lot, 9,000 square feet in area, or 135 feet deep. However, in neighborhoods where the lots are larger than that, the minimum lot size becomes the median of all properties within 500 feet. So for this neighborhood where the original plat doesn't meet our current standards of today, when these were platted, 50-foot wide lots were the city's standard. We changed that. I believe it was sometime in the 70s or 80s for that 75-foot wide new standard. So we have applicants run that median to give us an indication of what the real minimum lot size. What's the character of the area? This one is close. It's a little short of the medians, I think, due to the alleys. Hopefully that helps.
Sort of. So is it because 75 is larger than 50 that we have to go with the larger of the median?
Yeah, so 75 is the standard. That's the minimum lot width. So the variance requested is from 75 feet to the 49.8. All of these lots are existing legal non-conforming lots. None of them conform. So anytime we're doing a new subdivision, the applicants, the property owners, are held to our current standards. So that's the variance request, is to vary from those standards to allow lots that were more similar to the original plat. But it still takes a variance request.
Thank you, Carrie.
I have a question.
Please go.
Okay, Carrie, so presumably then there's no city ordinance that allows a lot that is, or two lots that are combined to be split back again. I mean, without having a hearing and a variance.
That's correct. It's very easy to combine lots. It's just a simple filling out of a form that gets submitted at the county, but it's difficult to reestablish them if the underlying plat was non-conforming. So that's part of why, these are always difficult over the past 15 years. That's why I show that map where we've approved some, we've denied some.
Okay, yeah, but these are literally individual lots that were combined. I mean, do you know of any cities that have a regulation that says, if they were combined, they can be uncombined?
I'm not familiar. There may be some, but Edina has chosen to go this route.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Carrie, I just had one question, and that's the alley to the south and all the alleys. Can you confirm that none of the alleys are part of the property, part of the 50 feet?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else have any questions? Well, it's the applicant's time. If you'd like to say something to just, better describe your project or why make your pitch, this is your chance. We'd like to hear from you.
Yep, thanks. First, I want to thank Carrie for helping us through the application process. This is the first time we've done this, and also thanking the Planning Commission for hearing our proposal. So my wife Linda and I are 20-year plus residents of Edina, and we became familiar with this area a number of years ago when our daughter and her family moved on the 5800 block of Zenith. We came across a property at 5833 Zenith that we wanted to help our daughter, who was going to move back to Minnesota from North Carolina, and build a house. And we partnered with Bell & Construction, Tim Bell, and he is on the line, to build that house. Unfortunately, my daughter, in the job that she was expecting to get when she to move back to Minnesota, did not come through. So we ended up selling the house. We liked the experience of the hands-on, working on and building in a house. So we looked at this as an investment opportunity, along with Bell & Construction, and have done 3 other houses, 2 other ones on Zenith, 5817 Zenith and 5904 Zenith. So we're very familiar with this with this specific area. We believe that one of our goals is to be very respectful of the neighborhood itself and the neighbors, and work with them as we go through the construction process. Tim Bellin runs a really high-class operation, and he has done a great job in communicating and working with the neighbors. We recently finished another home on Crescent in West Edina, and we think that the opportunity here is there's currently a rental house on the property, and so we don't own the property. We're looking to buy the property from the current owner. And we believe this is a great opportunity to turn that rental property into 2, family houses that we believe fit the neighborhood as it's been transforming over the last few years. And I think this is an opportunity for new families to move into a part of Edina that is very desirable. And one day we hope we get our daughter back from North Carolina and find a property in that area for her.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Do any members of the Planning Commission have any questions for the applicant? Okay. Well, they may come up in a moment, but thank you. And so now that allows us. Oh, did someone have Did someone have questions for the applicant? I didn't mean to move it too fast. Okay, well, hold on. They may come. I've seen them happen a few minutes down the road. So that brings us to the public comment section. So if any members of the public would like to speak on this matter, please call 1-800-374-0221, conference ID 3874344. Press *1. We put in the queue. You'll have up to 3 minutes to speak. We'll let you know when you're coming close to the end of your time, and we'll take a moment to let any calls come in.
Chair Nemerov, no one has indicated a desire to speak at this time. Again, I would remind anyone on the call, if you would like to speak, please press *1 to get in the queue. Otherwise, commissioners, I would recommend you wait a minute or so before moving on, just because there is a slight delay in the broadcast.
Thank you, Ms. Benarott. Okay. I'm just watching my digital watch tick, tick, tick. Jennifer, do you think now is sufficient? Should we wait a little bit more?
Yes, I think you can move on.
Okay. Well, that said, then before we move on, I thought we just touch on actually, let's close it.
I move to close the public hearing.
Thank you, Todd. Is there a second?
Second.
Liz, could you do a roll vote, please?
Commissioner Agnew?
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss?
Aye.
Commissioner Thorson?
Aye.
Commissioner Berube?
Aye.
Commissioner Miranda?
Aye.
Chair Nemerov?
Aye. Thank you. And so then we didn't receive any comments during the meeting, but we did receive 9 comments on Better Together. There are some for, some pro, some con. And I think I'm just going to focus on the cons for just a moment. And Carrie, have you had a chance to review these comments?
I have looked at them. They were more, not necessarily questions, but just...
Yeah, feedback.
Yeah, feedback.
Some seem to be about parking, traffic, neighborhood character. One kind of touching on maybe overbuilding. Do you have any feedback on those? I mean, can you talk about parking and traffic, for example?
Yes, so the addition of one additional house is not going to impact traffic in the neighborhood. This was originally platted for a house, so the street system, it's all been designed. So I don't think there's any traffic impacts. The neighborhood character, that's kind of where these are subjective. If you look at all the lots on Abbott, they're all 50-foot wide lots with the exception of this one lot that is 100 feet wide. Where there is larger lots, it's across the alley to the west, where you had the 3 lots that were platted into 2. So those are, roughly the 80-foot wide lot. So those are a little larger. It's the rear yards that face each other, where we've talked about that neighborhood character in the past. We seem to have focused on the front yards, the front-facing 50-foot wide lots. We've had some that have had larger lots behind them, some that were much more screened. But again, it's kind of subjective and for discussion amongst the council. As with all of these similar requests, staff has outlined an alternative for denial for the Planning Commission to consider if that's the direction.
Thanks, Kerry. There were also some comments about, say, for example, the idea of what are the rules or guideposts for tear downs, just and variances. You know, planning commission have been receiving this comment since before I joined. I mean, are there too many variances? What can we do about, the numbers and types of tear downs and variances?
Well, there wouldn't be any variances for the construction of the new homes. It's just the lot size that's being asked for variances here. We don't get a lot of these. There have been 15 to 20 in the last 20 years. So, on average, just one a year, roughly. We've seen more and more the last few years.
Okay. Does any other planning commissioners have any follow-up questions regarding public feedback? Sheila, did you have anything?
I do have a question that I should have asked before, but if it's not too late, could I ask the applicant a couple questions?
I knew we'd have one for the applicant.
Applicants,
Sure.
I should say. So I appreciate your presentation. A question for you, though, is as you look at these, the proposed 2 lots, you'd have the opportunity to build 2 homes. And I guess I'm just curious, what your thought is on the types of homes that you would build there. You've got a developer, a builder who you've worked with in the past, so you're familiar with his quality and obviously comfortable with that. But what kind of price point are you looking at? And I'm just trying to think of how the proposed 2 homes would add more to the body of housing within Edina versus the current home that's there, which, based on the description, seems like it's perfectly fine. 320,000 tax base, which Edina is in the lower end and allows more people to enter Edina, and you might be building $1 million homes. So, tell us more about what you're thinking for these 2 lots.
Sure. So the houses that we've built thus far in that area, we think these are going to be pretty similar to that. They've been ranging between 3,000 and 4,000 square feet, 4 to 5 bedrooms. The first one was the one we were building for our daughter. That was about an $800,000 property. And the other 2, one ended up going for $1,065,000 and another one went for $1,090,000. And the $1,065,000 one actually went higher than asking, as it was, very desirable. The quality that Bell and Construction puts into the house and that we want in these houses, made them very desirable. And families have moved into all of those. Obviously, a lot more than a $320,000 house. But we've also had pretty good success in that all of the demand for the house was, we sold them all within 2 weeks. So we believe that there is the demand for these types of houses in that neighborhood because it's a very desirable neighborhood.
I appreciate that, and certainly we want quality homes, and if we can get two more families in the neighborhood versus one, I think I had my affordable housing hat on, and was thinking you're taking an affordable, relatively affordable home away, and putting in really expensive homes and making a great profit. And we're not opposed to making a profit, but I think it's our responsibility to also weigh, the advantage of having 2 homes versus 1, but really taking away a home that, a workforce housing type home. So it's just something to consider.
Yeah, we appreciate that concern.
Do any other commissioners have any questions at this point or comments? I mean, this is the time for the planning commission to have a discussion. So, anyone, Lou, do you have anything like to share?
Yeah, sure. I think much like the previous discussion we had, I think this one's pretty black and white too, because here you have what was essentially 2 lots combined into one, and those 2 lots were the exact same size as all the adjacent lots on that block. And actually looking at I brought up the Hennepin County property map as we were discussing this, and it looks like the reason that one of these lots is slightly smaller. It's like 12 square feet smaller or something. Looks like the corner by the alley is actually cut off. It's rounded there, which probably accounts for the smaller size, because across the alley, that house is slightly smaller, or that property is slightly smaller too. But other than that little corner, I mean, these are basically two exact lots that exist everywhere else on the block. I mean, there's nothing exceptional about this double lot. It's literally a double lot. It's not smaller than two lots. It's not bigger than two lots. It is exactly two lots. And so dividing it to be two lots again just seems like a complete no-brainer to me. I just, I can't see any reason at all why we would deny this. Thanks.
Strauss, please.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Yeah, please fell out. Yeah, just quickly, to me, it's a subdivision request, and it seems to meet all the other requirements. To me, the issue will be down the road with what they then try and put on, those parcels, and if they're going to overbuild and overreach and all that, then there's going to be a problem. But I think the question before us is pretty straightforward. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Any other commissioners have any feedback on this matter? Any other questions, discussion? Sheila, do you have something?
I would say I do think the facts that this had been two plots that combined to one, so dividing it is not unreasonable, particularly given the rest of the plots on the street, and it fits right in. The median within 500 feet being 6,700 feet, and this being 33 or 6,350. It's all close enough, I think. But the biggest thing for me is every other house on that block is 50, and these will be 50, so they do fit in. I think there's a bigger question though, because if this were a developer, a professional developer coming in, taking away affordable housing, we would request some kind of compensation for the affordable housing. And I know this is a little bit different because it's individuals, but they have experience doing this, and they're obviously making some money doing this. And so for this particular case, we don't have precedent for doing that. But I think we should put on a work plan that if someone's doing this type of thing for an investment, that there should be some give back, because they're taking away a workforce house and putting up $1 million plus homes. So I would not be opposed to this particular proposal, but I think we need a broader discussion, maybe at some work plan, about how we treat individual investors similarly to, established developers when it comes to affordable housing and workforce housing.
Sheila. Anyone else have any comments? Todd, did you have a comment?
I have a comment. Well, a couple of things. I think, we have whenever these sort of projects get proposed, the first thing I look at is, well, what could go in there if we leave it as one lot, right? And then, we've seen a couple instances where we've denied these, and it's been a tear down, and you wind up getting a house in there. In this case, that probably, back the envelope, you could probably look at about a 5,000-6,000 square foot house, which suddenly be very much out of character with the rest of the neighborhood. So I think from changing the character of the neighborhood, it's all 50-foot lots. There's just not, putting a big house in there would really look odd, in my opinion. So, I think that means that. But I think also, there's nothing, the city is in no position to enforce an affordable housing mandate on this. City doesn't own the property, doesn't control it. If we deny the subdivision, then the property owner is free to sell to whoever they would like to, and they're free to do whatever they want with that property, which would include tearing it down and putting up a bigger house, right? With a 6,000 square foot house. So, I think when we're starting to get property by individual R1 by R1 properties on affordable housing, unless the city's got the funds to buy the house and maintain it as workforce housing, I think that's a pretty big burden to start putting on single properties to accommodate affordable housing, unless the city is willing to buy the houses and maintain them as as workforce housing, and we complain about how high prices are for houses now in Edina, put a tax on where every house you do, you have to contribute 10% of the value to affordable housing, and that just gets tacked on to the end. So, I think dealing with single family and the R2s are very, very different than dealing with multifamily when it comes to affordable housing, because the impact and the cost is far more severe because it's borne by a single property or two properties when you impose those sort of, essentially a tax on any of those properties.
Thanks. Anyone else have anything further?
I can make an additional comment.
Sure.
I agree with Commissioner Berube that affordability is a huge problem, both in Edina and just the Twin Cities in general. But I think there are ways, and I think the city should address it, but I think there are ways of dealing with it that are better than keeping a smaller, relative to the lot, a smaller, older house on a lot as is, rather than creating other ways of having affordable housing, even on that lot. So, for example, this isn't the time for this discussion, but having something like an accessory dwelling unit ordinance where people could build over their garage or something and have an apartment there or something, that would provide additional housing that would be much more affordable than a house. And that way, you could increase the affordability, the average affordability of housing in Edina without having really any major material impact on the character of the neighborhood. Right? But I don't want to get into that. But I'm just saying, I agree with her that that's an important consideration. I don't think anything that we're doing today there's no ordinance that I know of that affects how we can improve or not improve this. And I think there are probably better ways that we as a commission and the city can do to affect affordability. Thanks.
Thanks. Anyone else? I mean, great.
This is Commissioner Agnew.
Commissioner Agnew.
In my time on the commission now, which is I'm in my third month, this is the second subdivision variance or request that I'm having the opportunity to review. And I haven't seen any requests to join two lots together. So I wonder if down the line, what the impact will be across the city of Edina as we continue shrinking lots. But having said that, I think that that's something for us to consider kind of more high level and maybe in our planning session or working sessions. Because I do agree that this really feels like we're returning two lots to their original state when every other lot on this block is about the same size. So I'm supportive of this, but I do think it's worth a bit of discussion on the number of subdivision requests that we're seeing as a city. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, for reasons, I don't have much to add, really, although I did want to comment on Commissioner Agnew's last comment a little bit. For reasons I think mostly stated by Commissioner Strauss and Commissioner Moran in his first comment, I think this one's probably one that I would approve. Regarding, I think that's an insightful comment that Commissioner Agnew just raised about lots being separated and little being combined. I think that's a wonderful topic of discussion that it would be better taken offline. I suspect some of the reasons that we're seeing the way things were developed previously and that we're seeing them go now is perhaps just a natural evolution of the whole American suburban experiment, which really isn't that old, and Edina's not that old. And I suspect that what the mindsets of people many years ago was to have a little bit of a country style living where you would have a bigger lot, and you'd have a large lot, and you wouldn't have a big house on that lot. You'd have a regular sized house, but that you wanted more yard. I had a neighbor growing up that worked for Honeywell that I grew up in a much older neighborhood. I was one of the few young kids in my neighborhood. Many people were retired, and he was a retired Honeywell worker, and he spent all his day either golfing at Honeywell used to own their own golf course, or golfing in his big yard. And then when they sold, the yard got totally redone and the house got changed and the lot was revised because it was just a different era. I don't necessarily think this is the permanent direction of things, but I think that's probably the trend that we've seen over the last several decades, is people wanting from a big lot, a small house on a big lot, to a bigger house to maximize their impervious nature of their lots. And I think that's something that we'll probably talk about other time this year. But that said, I think as I said, for the reasons that Jerry and Lou initially stated, I think this is one that will go. I also do share the concern about naturally occurring affordable housing, and that's something we should also discuss offline. But I don't know if we have any. I don't know if that's something that I don't think. Let me rephrase that. I don't think that's something that weighs against approval of this matter. So, that said, did anyone have anything further, or should we call for a roll vote? Liz, could you do a roll vote, please?
Thank you. Has there been a motion made?
I move to approve the variances and subdivision, subject to the conditions and finding outlined in the staff memo.
A second.
Okay. Thank you, Liz, for making sure that we do that. Thank you. Now, could you do a roll vote, please?
Thank you. Commissioner Agnew?
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss?
Aye.
Commissioner Thorson?
Aye.
Commissioner Berube?
Aye.
Commissioner Miranda?
Aye.
Chair Nemerov?
Aye. So that's approved. Carrie, does this one go to council, or is that a final approval?
This one goes to City Council next week also.
Okay, thank you. Oh, thank you, everyone. Well, that takes us to the end of the public. Yes, is there anything further? I'm sorry. All right. Well, that takes us to the end of the public meeting section. To the next item on our agenda is reports and recommendations. Carrie, are there any reports or recommendations?
There are none.
Correspondence and petitions. We did receive some correspondence about affordable housing. Is there anything else? We didn't. We'll talk about that.
Nothing that I had, no.
Okay, we're going to talk about affordable housing briefly. Share and member comments. So first I'd like to offer member comments. Does any members have comments? Okay, chair comments. I have a few. First of all, bear with me, just indulge me for a moment. I was reading an article this week, and I thought I'd share this. I thought it was kind of a timely, small little quote story that might be good. There's been so much going on these days. We're living in, tumultuous times. I was reading an article about how Iceland dealt with the coronavirus comment, and apparently the first person to die from coronavirus in Iceland was a tourist from Australia who wanted to do some whale watching. And then after he died from coronavirus, his wife was in quarantine and really didn't know anyone. And a group formed in Iceland to support her. And they posted this note on the Facebook page. I thought this was something, I thought it was kind of a good thought for us to keep in mind at this time. It said, "You may not see us, you may not know us, but we all think of you and have you in our hearts." And I know for me, that's something I think we're all kind of struggling how to deal with some of the issues that we're dealing now. And I just thought that was well stated. I wanted to share it. So I had a few other things I wanted to share with you. First of all, we had a work session meeting a couple weeks ago. We discussed 3 items. I believe that 2 of them we came to a pretty good conclusion on. One we may want to discuss again at our June 24th work session. The one item that I think we'll talk a little bit further on is the Southdale Design Experience Guidelines, which includes setback. The portions that we've taken and drafted for ordinance are the portions regarding setback, which I think were pretty well accepted in the last work session, and the incorporation of some of the aesthetic guidelines that we've all talked about before. And I think the issue of whether to incorporate aesthetic guidelines into ordinances is something that, based on feedback I received, may bear a little more discussion. So if everyone's okay with that, I'd like to have that be one of the items we discuss at our next work session. If anyone have any feedback on that, I'm open, but otherwise we can talk about it in 2 weeks. I'll pause.
What's an aesthetic?
Aesthetic, things like some of these are things like we've discussed before. Here, 2 examples of aesthetic guidelines are at the ground floor level, have a certain percentage of transparent building. And then for the materials on street facing parts of the building, like limitations or restrictions against things like precast concrete and the types of materials that we're expecting to see. Those types of concepts.
Okay, I'd probably have a lot to say about the transparency thing because I don't think it's just aesthetics, but we can talk about that later.
Are you good with talking about it at the next work session?
Yeah, oh yeah, I'd love to.
Great, okay. And then, so the other 2 items we talked about at the last work session were affordable housing and taking our policy and putting it into an ordinance. It was pretty much what we discussed at the last work session was pretty much the policy we've seen, and we were all pretty good with it. Everyone that was at the work session was pretty good with it. We had 2 basic pieces of feedback for staff. One was, is $100,000 the right buy-in number? And 2, if that is the right buy-in number, or if another number is the right buy-in number, pick your number. Should there be an automatic ratchet every year that could always be overruled under the theory that things change over time, and sometimes it's easier to have a ratchet in and then waive the ratchet amount than it is to have a public hearing to change your amount every year. So at least then you've established that. And Stephanie Hawkinson was going to look into those things. Carrie, has she given you feedback?
Yes, we've got a survey from other cities, and so we'll share that at the work session as well.
Okay, we'll talk about that work session. Okay, those items. Then the final item was whether to draft an ordinance allowing single-family dwelling units, double dwelling units, townhouses to have 1 parking space per dwelling unit, as opposed to our rules now are 2 parking spaces. And everyone that was at the work session was okay with that. So what we're planning to do as soon as we can is bring that to a public hearing and get that one going, and bring all these to a public hearing. But it sounds like we're going to be talking about affordable housing at the next work session too. Okay, so that'll make that, and then there's a 3rd item that I would hope to talk about the next work session, which is parking. We talked about parking tonight. We talked about parking a few weeks ago with the Lorient project. We talked about parking before that with another project at 44th and France. I think we all have thoughts about parking. We've also been asked by City Council to add it to our work plan. And so I'd like to talk about parking at the next work session. Terry, is it possible to invite Bill Neuendorf so we can, because I think people are going to be interested in hearing about what's going on or what could go on at 44th and France. This, by the way, before you answer, this work session isn't going to be the be-all and end-all discussion on parking. It's going to be more of, think of it as a kickoff and just kind of hopefully getting our arms around the scope of the project. I personally think that parking is more than parking. I think that there are many adjacent issues that we're probably going to feel are related to parking. Tonight, for example, when we talked about parking, well, some people talked about bus transit, and I think they're probably going to touch, and I don't think we can just exclusively look at parking, although we're not going to address things like bus transit with new plans, but I think we're going to be informed by other issues besides only parking standards. But that said, the 44th and France area is a real trigger for our parking issues right now. And so Bill Neuendorf had been assigned the idea of working on community parking. So I just asked Carrie if he can be available, that'd be great, because I think it'd be something that'd be good to understand what's going to happen there with that topic.
Yes, I haven't talked to him specifically about it, but I will, hopefully he is available and can join us. I'm thinking let's try to really encourage a good turnout of all the commissioners. And if we do, it would be good to, I'm thinking, maybe go an hour and a half instead of an hour like we did the last time.
Any feedback? Do you
An hour, maybe 40 hours?
This is okay. We're not going to resolve anything regarding parking next week. Hopefully, we can resolve the Southdale. Hopefully, we can resolve affordable housing and kind of kick off parking. Parking's a big one. Carrie, do you have any visibility right now to what will be on our regular meeting in 2 weeks? At least the quantity, the size of things.
I'm trying to think here. I can't think of any project for myself. We've got about 6 items on the next council meeting, so I've been kind of focused on that. And I haven't given the planning commission meeting on the 24th a lot of thought yet. But Liz, do you recall if we have any variances on for the 24th?
Carrie, I'm taking a look right now. I don't believe we have any variances, but I can confirm what's on the agenda as of now in just one moment.
Okay. Because that obviously, that makes it easier to do an hour and a half work session by video call. So I'd like to follow up Carrie's comment about participation. And I've been thinking about this because I've noticed that we haven't always gotten, the last few work sessions haven't gotten a lot of participation, and I wanted to just talk about that briefly on this call too, because I think that the things we discuss on work sessions are really why most people get on the planning commission, because we really have the opportunity to. If I know there are many planning commissioners who have change they'd like to see made on a scale in Edina, and work sessions and projects that are covered work sessions are really the opportunity. So I think when a lot of us sign up for planning commission, it was the types of things that are discussed in work sessions is why we joined. Now I think that the planning commission has a very unique role in Edina. I think if you're on the board of appeal and equalization or something, you have kind of a very limited. There are matters, and then you adjudicate them. Do you approve or you disapprove? But if you're on the transportation commission, if you're on the health commission, if you're on the environmental commission, just about everything is long range. What kind of things do we want to do long range for Edina or citywide in scope? The planning commission is both. I think we're perhaps the only commission that has both, where we have both these short-term matters that we adjudicate, plus these long-range citywide type things. During our meetings, it's very hard to address these long-range citywide issues. We can kind of discuss them and kind of talk out loud, but nobody's really prepared, and we don't have research underlying it. We can't go out and come out of that and say, here's a to-do that we want to assign ourselves or staff, or even perhaps engage a consultant. But the work sessions are our opportunity to do that. And so I'd really, to echo Carrie's comment, I really hope everyone can participate. I will say also, in our last work session, the people that came, I've gotten, I felt, and I've gotten this feedback from others, we thought we had a really good discussion. And if you're like me, if you have a really good discussion, then people aren't at the meeting. And then when you go to have a meeting, the next meeting, and people weren't at the meeting say, well, you think of this, it almost feels a little bit, come to the meeting. and if you can't, people are busy. People have things come up. You have work assignments or other things going on, and sometimes these calls are hard. If you see things on the agenda, please send your comments. If you have thoughts about the topics, please send them to us in advance of the meeting so we can try to include them. Now, if these matters then will come after the work sessions, they will come eventually to these kind of discussions, share member comments, and then they will come to public meetings. If you're unable to make the meeting, please feel free to share your comments. Just realize the earlier you can get your comments in, the better we can address them, the better we can think about how to shape them into what we're doing. And again, it's also, kind of helpful to have it in that one discussion. So if you can, that's kind of what I had to say. I don't know, Carrie, is there anything else along those lines?
No, other than we've been doing some checking here, and it looks like we don't have any business items for the 24th. So maybe it turns into a little bit longer work session. We could cancel the regular meeting, and if it works better for people, we could start the work session later if that early start has been an issue for some commissioners. We can talk about it offline, but let's plan on a good, robust work session.
Yes. So that actually did ping me on one other thing I wanted to bring up. So first of all, to follow up on Carrie, if you think 6 o'clock would be a better start time, if you could email that to us, that would be great. And second, if you have thoughts about how we could better run the work session to make them more efficient, please send those also. And that's everything I had tonight. So does anyone else have anything? It's still sharing member comments. Well, thank you for listening. Staff comments, Carrie?
Nothing else for me. I was going to ask about direction for the work session, and I think we've got it.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for Carrie? Well, next item on the list is adjournment. Can anyone want to make a motion?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Liz, can you do a roll vote?
Commissioner Agnew?
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss?
Aye.
Commissioner Thorson?
You betcha.
Commissioner Berube?
Oh, yeah.
Commissioner Miranda?
Don't you know it? Yes.
Chair Nemerov?
Aye. Thank you, everyone. Good night.